Working with and calling in entities, the energetic cost to all of this, and how they can actually ruin your life. I want to talk about it in this particular video and just make this message very, very clear. I know we have quite a few messages and videos on this from the past already, but for some reason, I've just been contacted so much over these past few weeks. Once again, I don't know if these are new people or people who haven't received the initial message yet. And some of them were asking me, so what's your thought on this? Or they were promoting videos that are talking about the higher self and those type of things. Or I got a comment on, oh, what about working with Prometheus or Hercules, all these things? No, it's all the same thing. You're working with entities, you're working with astral entities, and this is not good. This is very detrimental to your life, okay? So what are entities exactly? Any name they go by: angels, archangels, spirit misguides, you know, how I call them. The New Age calls them spirit guides, but they're just misguiding you. Any of the gods and goddesses. A lot of people, maybe not in this culture, but in other cultures, they work with like Indian gods and goddesses. You have the Greek gods and goddesses. You have the Roman gods and goddesses, which there's an overlap between the Greek and the Roman ones, but they're not one and the same. Someone, like I said, asked me about Hercules, Prometheus, same thing. A few years ago, it was trendy, especially in the New Age deception, to channel source. Yet another one of those, right? Just putting it out there too. Like there's so many new things that they come up with that, oh, now you have to channel this and that. So if you have to channel source and you believe at the same time that you're a part of source, because let's just say you're not an NPC or a soulless being or a robotoid or whatever, why do you have to channel source when you have a soul? You know, like you are part of that. You have that creation power within you. Why do you need to channel it? You don't have to channel it. A lot of things are still being channeled in terms of GFL, alien ET agenda, you know, channeling all these entities like Arcturians, Syrians. That used to be more in a few years ago, but you still see it all over. And then, of course, you have all these other things such as astral critters that you're up against. So astral critters are imprints of people who have once occupied a space and that are still around, and people think they're an actual angel or something, or some sort of guide that can help them. No, that's just the energy imprints. That's has nothing to do. Or people have passed on and they're like, oh, I'm not talking to the deceased spirit or ghost of this person. No, that's just an astral critter. But I might talk about that in a different video because that is pretty extensive in and of itself. So, you know, take it from someone like me who has gone through this already for years and years. You know, I'm collapsing time for you. This is what the channel is about. It leads you, this entire topic of worshiping these entities, working with these entities, it leads you nowhere. And this channel, these messages that I'm putting out there, they're basically collapsing time for you. That's how you need to see it. You know, that's really how you need to see it. Because when I had my first major awakening back in 2014, the first thing that I got was advice from a friend who was spiritually minded, who was also following people like Teal Swan, by the way. Never resonated with me even back then. But he was basically pushing the entire Dolores Cannon book series on me, the 3 waves and the volunteers and this and that. And he was saying, oh, just start with this. So I spent a year or two digging through those, which never fully resonated with me. And that's also why I did a review on her, because I have experiences with these things. I'm not talking out of my behind. I don't have to interview former New Agers on this channel and pretend I actually care about their journey, because I am someone who had to go through all these deceptions and empower myself from this. And you know how much it actually, I know each and every one of you who've gone through this, you know how much it actually takes to do that. It takes a lot. Because when you start trying to take advice from other people, when you're like, oh, something's weird here, my life just really went sour, it went to hell. And the only people, because you're still in that community for whatever, the only people you come across are saying, oh, it's because you have this weird blockage or whatever. Oh, it's because of your own fault. You know, the gaslighting starts. You needing to channel yet another entity to clear your energy, or you need to clear this and that in your body. You know, this is uneffing yourself from that and really needing to take a step back and everything. I've gone through all of that. And this is why this is going to be the most authentic channel you will ever find on this subject, no matter how many other channels pop up out of nowhere and try to, you know, oh, I'm going to review this New Age or that New Age, or they don't have the experience. They don't have the experience that I have gone through. And this is why I think so many people can relate to this, because, you know, I actually care about people who all of a sudden have suicidal thoughts, who actually have thoughts of self-harm once they exit this cult-like thing, once they exit both religion and the New Age, by the way. And you're never going to hear from me how I turned from the New Age to a religion. You will never hear that from me, because both are a huge major deception, as we'll see. They both worship the same things, just different names to it. You will never hear that from me. But what I can tell you is I've gone through this, and I had my life in shambles. And I luckily had a support network in the form of family and very good friends who were able to catch me. And none of them are part of any of these deceptions, by the way. I luckily had that. I know not everyone has that. And that's where it gets really iffy and dicey. When you're somewhere in a weird mental space, you can't get you're having all these weird mental things happening to you because you called in all these entities and no one's there to help you. And I feel that's really the real danger of this. And right now we're in so different times than we were even 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10, 15 years ago. And we're in times where people just need to wake up. Okay. That is like the main message that I have to convey. If that's the one message that you're getting, I'm going to collapse time for you with these type of videos, with these type of messages. So first and foremost, why is this detrimental? Why is this bad? You know, both the New Age deception and religion, no matter what religion, likes to promote calling in all kinds of entities, which you are then supposed to rely on instead of being a powerful soul and relying on your own power and capabilities, your own intuition. Some of those entities are so-called angels and archangels. And in the New Age, you have, you know, the spirit guides, the ancestors, the higher self. And it's, of course, it's always a good one to follow. The higher self is the best one. Now, with religion, you have the angels in Christianity. You have, I think, even the angels in Islam. You know, you have them in Judaism. You have them all, like all of these prophetic messages of God, whichever God it is. There's several gods, but most people think it's just one God. So, yeah, another entity you're dealing with. In other types of like Buddhism, you have the same thing, you know, very complacent. Buddhism is extremely complacent, never change your life, just be with that. So what happens when you never change your life? Nothing ever changes. So you're basically denying your own creation power with a form of belief system that Buddhism actually teaches. So I just want to put that out there too, because I know some of the people that, you know, were following me years ago, they were like, oh, but Buddhism is great. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. None of this is great. Because if it actually tries to diminish the power that you have to create, this is also why psychic readings can be really detrimental, like the personal psychic readings. I'll talk about that more towards the end of this video, and I might have a separate video on it because I want to, it's, you know, these topics are so extremely important. But basically, you have all of these entities in every single religion, every single other cult-like belief system out there. They just have different names. You know, angels are called the same. Archangels are called the same in the New Age and Christianity. So you no matter what you adhere to, you're all under this here. So I always like to refer to spirit guides as spirit misguides. And I also want to put it out there. Yes, a lot of these entities are flat out bad and negative. A lot of them are just about as misled as you are, and they just want to have fun by giving people the wrong or dubious advice and see how your life is actually ruined in the process of following it. So if you want to call that mischievous with a negative twist, call it that. It's also important to note that none of these entities can get you out of the matrix. And if that's what you want, then no, you're not supposed to be working with a higher self or any of these things. So it should give you an idea of how little you need to rely on them. And that's why they are also labeled as false white light entities, but actually they're all just AI. You know, going down that rabbit hole would just loop you straight back into this reality and perhaps even keep you here for how long to come? Another billion years, another cycle, another eons of years to come? We don't know. You know, that's why it's best to not follow them at all. So angels are AI. If we want to start with angels, as basic as it sounds, religion, the New Age like to emphasize angels. It's interesting that both of these cult-like belief systems actually believe in the same thing for once. But then again, religion and the New Age also are interested in ascension or a form of heaven or new earth. The concepts are basically the same, but they're just labeled differently in those beliefs. So whether or not angels were created thousands or more years ago, you know, or whether or not they're a bit younger than that is still up for debate. But angels are AI entities which somehow came about, which somehow were created. Parts of the archangels created these angels for sure. I also think parts of the souls created these angels so that they don't feel as alone. I think it's similar to clones and soulless beings, like this entire angel, all of that. I think they all fall in the same category, but angels are more like in the astral, whereas the soulless beings are in the actual physical. So angels are astral entities made by AI, which are AI, basically, for the most part. And they therefore can't help you or give you much advice. You know, people out there making their entire message about, oh, the angels did this today, that today. I always like to call them misguided by angels because that's basically what it is. You know, if they do give you advice, I want to put this out there because before all of this, before, you know, I started digging through this and had to unearth myself from a lot of these beliefs too, I also had psychic readings from people. I think we all have. You know, if you've ever been to like any of the Sedona crystal shops or psychic shops, or you've ever gone to an event like a New Age spiritual event fair, if you had a reading with any of these, 100%, 99% of them are working with angels, archangels, all of this stuff. And so what I can say from my own personal experience of having had readings and healings done by these people, there's always going to be a cost or a price tag attached to it. So maybe 50% of the message will resonate, and that's what ropes you in, what draws you in. But then wham, the hammer comes down and there's a piece of advice that follows is actually really dangerous and really detrimental. And some of it could be like, oh, and you have to let this person go and they grow and this and that, or you have to do this tonight. And that's, you know, some sort of sacrifice or ritual, which is really bad. So sacrifice could be also a pet or a loved one is suddenly dying or falling ill when calling them in profusely. I'm not saying this to scare you, but I've seen it happen in a lot of people's lives. You know, they were talking to their angels or archangels every single day. Oh, all of a sudden their mom is in a hospital or their cat died or whatever. You know, all of a sudden their life went downhill or to hell, to actual hell after working with these entities. And there was always a major sacrifice involved. So this is more for people who are really calling them in almost every single day. But also if you just work with them a little bit, don't get misguided by them. Absolutely do not. There's going to be a cost to it. The cost is usually your soul. Also, what's worth pointing out is angels can mean angle if you switch the letters around. So they're just showcasing a different angle to this matrix reality. They're not outside. Okay. Could be even like a neutral one, but words have power and can produce spells in your reality. It's important to dissect them and see this is what they're doing too. You know, you're using these words and there's a magic, a form of energy attached to it. Archangels also exist in both religion and New Age. And what I found, what most people are actually communicating with or calling in from the astral are rarely the archangels, but they're calling in stronger AI entities who like to disguise themselves as such. Same goes for the ascended masters. So none of these actually exist, at least not in this energetic realm or whatever the heck the New Age pushes these days, like the 5D ascension realm. But instead, a lot of these archangels are actually even incarnated nowadays. So I talk about Archangel Nathaniel, Raphael, a lot of these, they're actually here incarnated as soulless beings. But, you know, that's a whole different topic too. And it's just going to get too long when we talk about that and specifically. But when I was working with other healers who would call them in, you know, I had my experience like there was when I was trying to learn sound healing a bit more, again, ages ago, before I had that major awakening from the New Age. This person was calling in Archangel Michael, just as an example, during their sound healing sessions and other seances. And Archangel Michael, or whatever that entity was disguised as them, would always be the most aggressive and angriest of all. And every time after I had, like, it would be like a once a week or once a month thing. Every time when I left that session somehow, I would feel extremely agitated, extremely angry. And there would be some sort of weird situation happening where I knew, oh, this is just, you know, there's some sort of friction at home somehow or something on the subway on my way back where I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like now they put an entity attachment on you have to get rid of it. But if you don't know that's happening, you're carrying that with you for quite a while. So I therefore concluded that the astral entity connected to this being, mean Archangel Michael in particular, is extremely negative and has the ability to really mess up people's lives. So it's possible, you know, that's yeah, there's just so much that goes into it. You know, if you talk about them being reincarnated here, yes, it's possible that they would also be angry, all of that, but you know, let's just leave that to the side. So ascended masters, same thing. Jesus is not Sananda, Mary Magdalene is not Sophia, you know, all these saints were also not very saint-like in real life. Some saints right now, they're making Mother Teresa a saint. She was involved in things like child trafficking. Those, like, that gives you an idea, you know. Most were just regular, normal people. You know, if you look at some people really did have a good conscience. Like this is like hundreds and thousands of years ago, but a lot of them didn't. And so now they're being hyped up specifically more by the Catholic Church and everything. Oh, this was a saint-like person, when in reality, they were actually really evil people. Or really cruel, you know, and then they were pushed through the religious movement, and religious movement follows an agenda of disempowerment in and of itself. So these so-called saints, if you really go back to, oh, let's just call them Saint Patrick or Saints Nicholas and whatever, they're most likely reincarnated here in the recycling trap anyhow, and they're just figuring their way through. Or perhaps they're some of them who were good people, I don't think it was a lot of them, were kept down to such a degree that it's almost impossible for them to even wake up from the gazillion amounts of deception thrown at them. So Saint Germain is always a huge example of that. You know, Saint Germain, I talked about where he lives nowadays and what he does and everything. So it's just a regular person, right? Spirit guides and the higher self. Two big concepts that the New Age always likes to push. And yeah, there's not much to say about that. Like, why? So first of all, you know, I've heard stories of people actually turning bankrupt and broken by following the advice of their spirit guides. You know, others had suicidal thoughts, everything put on them, turned almost insane by keep following the path their so-called guides told them to follow until they realized, oh, it was ruining their life. You know, just as a mild example here. But why do you need to rely on outside entities who mislabel themselves as guides in the astral? It's complete ludicrousy, as everything else that we've discussed. And random astral entities will disguise themselves as your grandmother, your spirit guide, you know, let's just say a Native American guide or something, your power animal, your this and that alien ET guide, you know, who will have your back. It's just not the case. So also with channeling, because a lot of this involves channeling, when you're like, oh, we're going to channel this and that entity, there's a false high that you may get from channeling these entities, and it rarely lasts very long. And when it fades, you often have to keep coming back for more and more. It's like being on a form of substance abuse, even though you don't have to be that to channel, until you're at a point where you don't know whose advice to follow and why, right? This is what I like to call the state of total disempowerment, and a lot of New Agers have gone through this. A lot of channelers that I dissect and criticize on this particular channel, like the YouTube channel, have surpassed this state, and it's important to point this out. And this is why the reviews are so important, because you can see it. You know, a lot of people are commenting, oh, they have these empty eyes, this empty stare. Yeah, because they've passed the state of total disempowerment. Oftentimes their energy, in addition, is absolutely horrendous and angry too, or simply empty and soulless. So it really makes you wonder, what part of their life did they sacrifice to be where they are now? So this is in regards to a lot of people who are still channeling, and especially the huger names. So then we have the concept of ancestors. This happens in both like the New Age, but also things like shamanism and other spiritual beliefs. It's very common to promote the concept of ancestors. And, you know, when I teach about this in none of my courses, including the ancestral healing course, will you ever learn how to call in any of those, because I find it's just another false white light concept and very detrimental. If our ancestors really knew more about this reality than you, do you think you would still be here? You know, it's true that there's a form of ancient knowledge that you can find from maybe a few hundred years ago or thousands of years ago that is getting lost, that people maybe are rediscovering nowadays too. You know, oh, how can we be more organic in our lives? How can we actually make this and that, you know, like food wise or whatever? It's true that there's a lot of ancient knowledge, like especially like with herbal wisdom and trying to find alternative holistic paths of medicine and whatever. It's true. This has gotten lost and is being slowly rediscovered, but you don't need to channel your ancestors to get this, you know? From a naturopath standpoint, people back then could have very well been healthier and had more effective ways to deal with things like disease than what's thrown at us these days from, you know, the medical industry and so-called science and everything. However, just because that ancient knowledge exists, it doesn't elevate ancestors or these tribal, like native tribes or whatever, to saint-like status. Absolutely not. If you take the Mayans, the Vikings, other nations and tribes, some of those were among one of the most brutal out there. So I know this for a fact. There's at least 5 people that I know. You know, one is like this Irish girl. Another one, I don't even know what her ancestry is Peruvian or something, but you know, this Irish girl is really promoting, oh, and my Celtic ancestors or Viking ancestors, like whatever it is that she thinks her ancestors are, they would have never tolerated what we're going through now with this. And I'm like, do you even know what they did to people back then? You know, do you know how brutal it was to live in those times? Like, just putting that out there. The Mayans, if you want to really go into the Mayans, they put their victims and captives under psychedelics for fun. And then these people had to find their way out of an elaborate maze or labyrinth. You think that's great? That's basically a death sentence for some. You know, if you've ever been under psychedelics, this can last a while. This can last 8 hours or longer. And you're supposed to find your way through an actual labyrinth to get out. You're going to die. You know, and these labyrinths usually have like wild animals, those type of things. You're not going to be able to defend yourself, is my point. So you know, of course, there's way more brutal stories to tell than this, but this is one story of the Mayans that keeps coming back to me over and over again. Like the people always hyping, oh, the Mayan pyramids, the Mayan. First of all, they're not even that old. That's number one. There are cultures that are way older than them. And then second of all, they were not the saints that people want them to be at all. You know, they were actually quite brutal to their own tribes and also the people that were their victims and captives. So what I've gotten so far is that our ancestors are really not around in the way the New Age wants us to believe and all these other spiritual belief systems want us to believe. It's true that land carries energy and imprints of the wars that happened on there, the cultures that used to exist. But if you're connecting with ancestors in the astral or someone's promoting that you do, you're once again connecting with random AI entities, not your deceased Viking great grandfather or your Mayan ancestor, whatever it is, whoever you want to connect to. So souls are being reincarnated over and over again. If they aren't, they most likely find their way out and are not around anymore, which is also why people have their own YouTube channels of claiming they've come back or whatever. It's untrue because you're here, you didn't find your way out. I know this information, especially in regards to the ancestors, can be quite triggering and shocking for some. Especially people are still under all these deceptions. But yeah, you know, I don't expect everyone to understand this unless you've experienced the things yourself and can confidently say how the New Age really ruined your life, which is the case for a lot of people who come to me, a lot of people I've worked on. It's an awakening from the false awakening, so to speak. So the real question really is, why are we always motivated to look outside of ourselves instead of finding that inner power within? Like almost no one teaches that ever. You know, none of these entities are anything you need to rely on, but your intuition very well is. And I think it's important to fine tune it to the maximum extent that you have. And going back to this entire concept of, you know, psychic readings and everything, what I personally have to say on it, instead of going to people for psychic readings, the thing with psychic readings is a lot of people who give them, they don't work on themselves nearly enough. They don't work on themselves daily. They don't tap into their own soul, communication with their soul daily. They don't even cleanse their energy significantly on a daily basis. Let's just say they give like 5 psychic readings a day. I'm pretty sure, you know, there's some sort of energy carryover from a previous person they psychic. So first of all, there's a million types of different psychic readers. Some that say, oh, it's coming from my lineage, this and that, you know, all of that. You don't need any of that. But also they're having their own opinion, their own worldview put onto your psychic reading. So you might as well, you're just getting a major opinion and a little bit of psychic insight these people have. And then let's just say 50% of your psychic reading was actually true, but then wham, the hammer comes down because they're going to tell you something so out of integrity that can really leave you shaken up, or who knows what. And this is partially due to them talking to these entities or calling in these entities. It's just, you know, a lot of them are just straight up charlatans. And from a few of these, like even before I was in any of these spiritual circles, so a few of these, I was even like, I want my money back, because what you said in your little glass ball or whatever actually didn't come true at all. You know, I remember I once had a reading done, this is ages ago in 2013, even before my major awakening, where she was saying this and that about a relationship I was in and whatever, and nothing really resonated. And it was like at a birthday party of a friend. And you know, this is like, these are the things, you know, these are things that just happen in real life when you socialize, when you go to people's parties, when you do this and that. And, you know, it's like, okay, let's just try out a psychic reading or like a tarot reading. And then, okay, oh, a little bit is true. Yes, it's true. I hate my job. And yes, it's true. I deserve a better job, this thing. And then wham, the hammer comes down where, oh, and this, and I'm like, no, this is not good at all. And I wasn't the only one who had an issue with her readings either. So it's similar also with like animal communicators. If they're calling in entities, same thing. You know, it's not necessarily strictly the animal soul they're talking to. So, you know, for me personally, instead of getting a psychic reading from a person, be in touch with your own soul. And the best advice that I've heard and I want to pass on to you is, the only way to really 100% predict your future is to simply create it. That's all you need to know. about psychic readings. You know, you don't need to be in touch with a deceased, this and that person or whatever. It's just not necessary. You know, like be in touch with your own intuition. You would do yourself and your soul a major favor. So you do have to be really careful with everything. I want to go back to like the spiritual circles, or just, you know, any things, like let's just say you're spiritually inclined, you're moving to a new place, you want to make new friends. Oh, let's just go to this full moon circle or drumming circle or cacao circles. Those are really the only events, or like ecstatic dance events. Those are like the only events that are there. You know, there's no super duper awake something aware circle. You're going to fall into those traps. You know, a lot of them are just new age minded, and so you attend those because you want to socialize. And you know, I do say a lot of fun in life does go away when you know all of this. You know, you already stopped drinking alcohol because you don't want to be entity possessed or entity attached by that. So you can't really necessarily attend a club or a bar, or if you do, you're going to be the only sober person. People are always going to try to push the alcohol in your face, you know, no matter where you are. But Europe is really bad about that, of course, because Europe has not understood, no matter where you go, how detrimental alcohol is. So it's like, oh, you're not drinking, something's wrong with you. Oh, of course, something's wrong with me, not with you, who has to have their 3 beers every day, or who can't live without having their spirit, you know, their whatever it is they want after this event. Or yeah, so always something wrong with me, not with other people, right? Like for those who don't drink, you know what I'm talking about. So then you're like, okay, so I can't really attend this boom boom club because there's too many alcoholic entities here. So let's just do like a spiritual event. And oh, now that spiritual thing is calling in, or whoever claims they're, oh, I'm a spiritual teacher of the circle. Now they're calling in all these entities during this and that circle. And now you have to deal with, you know, either leaving that mid-sentence or just going home and removing whatever it is that attached to you. So this is also why all these mass events, be it online or in person, you know, the mass meditations, the Lionsgate portal, any type of thing, any type of event that's being promoted. Oh, now we're doing a guided meditation in regards to it. They all want to grab your energy and use it for their very dark purposes and have your soul pieces build up all these realities, not in a good way. Okay. So it's entities, and it's people misguided by these entities. They are acting as empty containers to those entities. And that's what they're really banking off of, like you going to these things and giving your energy currency away to them. And that is like really the main issue. So, you know, it's, if you have to be careful with everything, really everything out there. And if it sounds too good to be true, most likely it is. I've had plenty of people who were legit ruined by this. When I done sessions on them, you know, my sessions don't call anything at all. Just want to put that out there too, which is pretty rare, because a lot of times when you go to people and they've learned from others, like specific, you know, it's just being taught over and over again. Like this entire misguidedness is being taught over and over again. Oh, you have to call upon this guide and that again. No, absolutely not. So when I've worked with people, you know, plenty of them had their lives ruined by this. Their soul pieces are in completely different realities, or they're cocooned into an actual structure. Like this is why I talk about the Lisa Renee thing, because it's a perfect example of it. Or they've somehow gone completely astray. It's really no joke. You know, people are hearing voices in their head, everything. Like this is no joke what you're missing. Like people really think it's still harmless to follow all these teachings on the side somehow. You know, I have people following this channel who are commenting on a lot of other people's channels, being like, oh yes, you know, let's just do they're commenting on new age channels and think I don't see that somehow. Or people like, you know, I really feel I'm talking about the same things over and over and over again, and somehow it's just not sticking for people. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I don't even know how to say it anymore, how to make it clear, but I hope this video somehow makes it clear how really bad and detrimental it is. And it's no joke, because even if you're doing it just a few times, because let's just say you give tarot card readings or psychic readings and you're communicating with who knows what, it's out of integrity. You know, you don't have to call in any of this. Why can't you just call in your own intuition or rely on your own intuition? That's something to consider too, if you're really working in this industry and doing that. And for others who are going to those people and getting their yearly psychic read or psychic fix on, why do you need to do that? You don't. You have all of that within you. And the best way to predict the future really is to create it. And a lot of people won't tell you that because their businesses rely on that. You know, they really rely on people getting hooked and addicted to your message, like the messages they put out there and everything too. Anyhow, I hope this clarifies it. Thank you so much for your attention, and let me know if you've had a recent experience. I know quite a few people have. Until then.